it can get discouraging. I mean, there were definitely days where I did not post,
Yeah.
but I tried really hard to be as consistent as I could. And I think that just showed anyone who saw our page, whether it was an expectant mother or someone who knew an expectant mother, that we're here, we're serious about this, we're actively looking, versus if you came across a page and the last post was weeks or months ago, you might think, oh, maybe they have a match, or maybe they're not trying to adopt anymore. It's just, I really think at the end of the day, the best thing we ever did was show up and be consistent.
Your dream is to become a mom. My dream is to help you get there. I'm Rebecca Greenspan, a single mom through domestic adoption and an adoption consultant for over a decade. I'll be your guide, along with other adoption professionals and members of the adoption constellation, walking you step by step down this beautiful and complex path of adopting your baby. When I was going through the adoption process, I had no idea what I was doing, what I needed to know, or more importantly, who to trust. Well, after helping hundreds and hundreds of families grow through the beauty and complexity of adoption, I've learned more than a thing or two, and let me tell you, it's not always rainbows and butterflies. This isn't just another podcast sharing adoption stories, but it's for you if you're genuinely committed to diving in with an open heart, eager to learn everything there is to know about adopting a baby so that you can show up for yourself and your child in the best way possible. This podcast is for you if you're ready to put your newfound knowledge into action. Adoption isn't for the weak of heart, and it certainly isn't done when your baby gets placed in your arms. If that's what you think, I'm afraid you're living in la la land. My promise to you is to keep it real if you promise to keep digging. We'll acknowledge the hard, and we'll also celebrate the joy that is adoption. You ready? Let's do this. What if you could turn your dream of adopting a child into reality in just a few months, all by harnessing the power of social media? Today's guest did exactly that, not once, but twice. Meet Lindsay Bruggeman, a savvy social media marketer who became a mother of two boys under 1 year apart by leveraging Facebook and Instagram to match with her boys' expectant mamas. With 7 years of marketing experience under her belt, Lindsay not only built her family, but is now on a mission to help other hopeful adoptive parents do the same thing with her upcoming course called Using Facebook to Match for Adoption. Today, Lindsay's here to share the ups and downs as well as provide you some tactical advice about adopting through social media. Buckle up. This episode is packed with insights, surprises, and plenty of heart. Welcome, Lindsay. Thank you so much for being part of our podcast today. I am going to just jump in with the first question, which is that you and your husband matched through social media in just 4 months. With that said, tell us a little bit about your background. I'm wondering if you have to be some sort of social media expert so that someone else could have the same success.
Yeah, well, thanks so much for having me. It's exciting to be here. You do not have to be a social media expert whatsoever. I held a few different marketing jobs before we started our journey, and social media was always a piece of that. So I'm very familiar with social media. I've used a lot of different strategies to accomplish different goals using social media, but I don't even know that I'd consider myself an expert, at least not when we started. I've learned a lot along the way. I think the biggest thing that anybody who wants to do this has to do is just be patient, not give up, stick with a plan, and just show up as your authentic self every day.
Yeah, that's true. And it's hard. It's easier said than done.
Yeah,
All right.
that's for sure.
Yeah. Okay. So if you don't have to be a social, what exactly is your marketing background, by the way? Just
I've really done a little bit of everything. So I've dabbled in fundraising for nonprofits, and that's a lot of relationship marketing and social media, Currently, I'm a marketing specialist for a factory that makes aluminum railing and columns for construction projects. So it's kind of, it's very niche. It's not something that you say as a kid, oh, that's what I want to do when I grow up. But I like the work and I like the people. So, like I said, social media has just been a piece of what I've done, since college, honestly.
Oh my gosh, we have a little bit in common in that I worked in the scrap metal industry
Oh,
for a
wow.
while, kind of doing their marketing and sales. So, and I also worked in the nonprofit world and a lot of event planning. So, yeah, all of those types of jobs require marketing without being like a social media expert. So
Right.
now I kind of get that. A little fun fact about me. I don't think a lot of people knew that about me. Did you know from the start that you wanted to try and match on your own? And also, was your husband in agreement?
Yeah. So, adoption was definitely something that was on my heart and he kind of got introduced to through me. And I think because of that, he was kind of like, all right, lead the way. Like, how are we doing this? And we had only been married for about 8 or 9 months when we decided to start the process. And I just, from the research I did, I knew that we could sign up with an agency, and I heard that wait times were really long until I learned about the concept of self-matching and that there's
Mm.
so many ways to do that. So we kind of contemplated which ways we could do that and knew that an agency would always be there if we decided to go that route, but we just kind of, I mean, we weren't in like some big hurry to adopt. Like, obviously we wanted to, and we didn't want to wait years and years, but we said, let's try it this way and see what happens. So once we decided on self-matching, I kind of took the reins with social media and said, we can do it this way. And he was very open to it. I said, we're going to have to share a lot about ourselves out there. And he was okay with that. And so that's kind of how it all went down. And we just started trying all different things and kind of seeing what worked.
Okay, but let me take you back for a minute because I'm guessing you didn't know anything about adoption when you started, did you?
Not a lot. I didn't know a lot about the process, but it is something I've always wanted to do. And I remember
Sure.
being in high school or college and seeing people have a post shared around on Facebook about them trying to adopt. And so I was like, well,
Okay.
that's interesting. So it was kind of always in the back of my mind. But yeah, I did not know near as much as I do now when we set out to start. And actually, how I learned was just joining Facebook groups about adoption, and reading people's posts and the questions they were asking, and then reading all the different answers that they were getting. And honestly, that's where I send a lot of people who are newer to the process, because what are you out except some time, and you can learn so much. You don't even have to ask a question, because if you search, there's a good chance that someone's already asked it.
Mm.
And there's some that are more focused on self-matching, and there's some that are more generic for the process, and there's some that are by state. So there's really just so much information out there, and it's all just at your fingertips.
That is a great piece of advice and a nice little nugget to start with. I'm pushing just a little bit because I think I know the answer, but what inspired you to do it on your own when you could work with experts who do this every day?
Part of it was the cost. So
Ding, 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 ding. That's what I expected.
I know that that's a factor for a lot of people. And when you see the cost being 60, 70, $80,000, that's really intimidating. Especially as a newly married couple, we didn't have that just lying around. So we did, I believe, save a lot of money by self-matching. And I think that if there's anybody that's trying to start their journey and be very conscious of cost, that it's something to consider for sure.
Yeah, I think that for most people, the reason why they start trying on their own is to try to save money. And for many people, it doesn't work out. And so, like a year or two later, then they either find a consultant or an agency.
Mm-hmm.
But for you, that wasn't the case. So, we'll get into that. But what was your initial strategy So once you decided you were going to try this on your own and you knew social media was probably the way to do that because of what you learned in Facebook groups or different groups that you were in, what was your initial strategy? How did you get started?
So the biggest thing, and this is another nugget that I tell everyone getting started, is to create a separate page. So on Facebook, you have your profile, and that's kind of to outline who you are. It's where you have your friends. It might be friends you went to school with, or friends from work, or whoever it is. And then there's also pages. So a lot of businesses are set up as pages. I always recommend using a page to try and promote yourself to Match for Adoption on Facebook, for a lot of reasons. One of them is kind of a cultural thing with Facebook. So it's, adding someone as a friend versus following a page is a little bit different. It just feels like a different commitment. For one thing, when you follow a page, you just click follow, and whoever's managing that page doesn't necessarily get a notification that you're following them. Versus if you send a friend request, they have to accept it, and it just kind of calls more attention to the person doing that. So it's just a little cultural thing that I think I knew from using Facebook and then also managing pages for the different companies that I had worked for. It felt like the way to go. And then another reason is just it separates it from your personal profile a little bit, which, not that you're hiding anything, it's just more, this is focused on adoption. These are the things about me that apply to my adoption journey. And a lot of the information would be the same, because a lot of the pictures that I had on our adoption page were the same pictures I was putting on my profile, or I was posting them on the adoption page and then sharing them on my personal profile anyway. But it just kind of gives that separation. And then when you match, or if you ever decide to take a break from trying to use Facebook to match, you can just kind of silence that page, and it doesn't impact your Facebook profile that you've had, since 2008 or whenever. So that's a piece of the strategy. And then the rest of it was just to kind of start posting. I tried to post every day, which might have been a little bit annoying to some of the followers, but I felt like that was showing up for the algorithm. It was saying, I'm here to create content. I want to get eyes on this. And I really do think that helped on both Facebook and Instagram. Facebook's where we actually matched, but I tried to post on both every day. And a lot of times the content was pretty similar or the same. But I think just showing up and putting stuff out there is the best way for people to see it. If you don't post but once a week, then the most that anyone can see you and be reminded of your journey and share it with their friends is once a week. And people may or may not share that often, but if you're sharing every day, it gives them a lot more opportunity to help you in your journey.
And your stuff gets pushed out more. So you
Exactly.
talked about the algorithm. That's super smart. Like, okay, so having a marketing background and also being young and knowing more about social media than maybe I did at your age, definitely helps too. I would have never thought about a business page versus a personal page. So anyone can create a business page, right?
Yeah, so it has to be managed from a profile. So if you don't have Facebook, you do have to create the profile to create the page. But I'd still recommend making it a page that you're going to get spread around. Just even how they interact with the algorithm is different than a profile, with different privacy settings and all that kind of thing.
Okay, that's amazing. So I was going to ask you, what do you think set you apart? But I think it's that you posted every day. Most people don't.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of hopeful adoptive parents that want to start, and maybe they'll post pretty regularly for a month, and then it'll fizzle out, and then all of a sudden the most recent post is 3 months old, and um, it can get discouraging. I mean, there were definitely days where I did not post,
Yeah.
but I tried really hard to be as consistent as I could. And I think that just showed anyone who saw our page, whether it was an expectant mother or someone who knew an expectant mother, that we're here, we're serious about this, we're actively looking, versus if you came across a page and the last post was weeks or months ago, you might think, oh, maybe they have a match, or maybe they're not trying to adopt anymore. It's just, I really think at the end of the day, the best thing we ever did was show up and be consistent.
When people talk to me about business and being an entrepreneur, and they asked me, what are the top three biggest things you've ever learned in business? The first one I say is being consistent.
Mm-hmm.
Most people are not in
Mm-hmm.
business and in life. So if you're the one that's there every day, you're going to be there when somebody is scrolling.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what sets you apart. Let's get down into the nitty-gritty a little bit here.
Mm-hmm.
What the heck did you post every day? And
So
did
it,
you what was did you have like a schedule, a routine? Like, how did you keep it up?
I really didn't have a schedule. I just tried to make sure something went every day. So whether it was 6 a.m. and I just got up and was getting ready for work and thought, oh, this is what I'm doing today, and I have a picture that goes along with it. I'll just throw it out there before my day gets busy. Or maybe it was on my lunch break or after work or even before bed. There really was no rhyme or reason to that. And now there is some strategy there and things you can look into with time of day and what resonates with your audience. But first you have to build that audience and get that data. So I was just kind of posting what we were up to, and when we weren't really up to anything, I was posting who we are, what kinds of things we like to do. So maybe we weren't really doing anything this weekend, but I have an old picture from when we went camping a few months ago before, we started. And so I'll post that and say, we like to camp. This is the kind of things we do when we're camping. What's your favorite outside activity? And then sometimes people would comment and that only boosts it further. So that was a lot of it. Otherwise it was, oh, we went to a football game today. Here's a picture. It was super fun. What's your favorite sports team? Ending with a question as often as I could definitely seemed to help. And something I always tell people that I'm trying to help with this is people like to talk about themselves. So especially on Facebook, if you can give them an opportunity to answer a question about themselves, then they're a lot more likely to comment. And then on days where you really don't have anything to post, you can kind of explain, like, this is what we're trying to do. This is how we're trying to do it. You following, you commenting, liking, sharing our stuff is helping us. It's boosting us in the algorithm. It's getting more eyes on our content, and you're helping us get closer to our goal of adoption. So that's a lot to take in, but that's kind of what I was posting, is just, I was saying who we are, what we like to do, things about us, and then kind of inviting people to be part of that and explaining how they could do so.
Yeah, through questions also for engagement. Now, did you also post videos or just pictures?
So we did some video. We did not do a lot, and I do recommend doing it. We did a little bit on Facebook, and they always performed really well. And we should have done more, but it was just a lot harder, and we didn't always get around to it. We did do a lot of reels on Instagram. I feel like reels were starting to get popular at that time. This was mostly in 2022 that we were doing this. And so we were just doing goofy little reels. And if we could tie it back to the fact that we were adopting, I haven't looked at them in a while. They're probably so funny because we were just being goofy and having fun with it. And that definitely is how we grew on Instagram. So in that sense, we were doing some video. But we had a much bigger following on Facebook, and ultimately that's where we matched.
That's so interesting. And was it just Facebook and Instagram that you were using?
Yeah, we tried TikTok for a short time and found a lot of people who are against adoption there. And it's just such a different platform, and a lot of the, stuff we were trying to do on TikTok was kind of like, it was different content than what we were doing on Facebook and Instagram. At that time, Instagram Reels were like 3 weeks behind TikTok trends. I don't know if it still is. So we weren't reusing the same content across all platforms for one day. And we just decided it wasn't for us. But Facebook and Instagram is definitely where we had the most support.
Okay, awesome. There are a lot of scammers out there.
Mm-hmm.
Did you encounter that at all?
So something I learned about adoption through this process was just how many scammers there are, and that they're not only trying to financially scam you, and there's quite a few emotional scammers. So thankfully, we never encountered a financial scam. And that was kind of what I prepared for and knew the signs of. Emotional scammers did approach us, and it was difficult, but after one or two, we learned kind of the signs to look for. And by that point, it really wasn't an issue. I mean, it's definitely something that kind of makes you sick to your stomach that someone would do that. But once you learn what to look for, or once I learned what to look for, I should say, we didn't really have much issue with that. We could usually tell pretty quickly if someone was a scam. And I will say that with both of our sons' bio parents, when they reached out to us, we had no doubts. So that doesn't mean that that's always going to be the case, but we were very fortunate to feel very confident as soon as they reached out.
All right, Lindsay, spill the tea. What are some of those red flags? How did you know?
So if they are like real chatty and then go quiet out of nowhere, sometimes that can be a red flag. If you mention that you're working with an attorney and that makes them act funny, like ghost you or get really angry, that's definitely a red flag. Getting angry for no reason, like just out of nowhere, is a red flag. I think sometimes sharing an ultrasound like right away could be a red flag. Like, why are you trying so hard to prove to me that you're pregnant? And because ultrasounds unfortunately can be faked or stolen so easily. So that's definitely a red flag. And I'll say, like, we were talking to my oldest birth mom for a little bit and mentioned an attorney, and she was like, oh, great, like I have so many questions. Do you think he could help me answer them? Like just about the birth father's rights and things like that, that we honestly didn't know exactly how that worked. And so just her willingness to reach out to an attorney or let us, help her get connected to somebody that could answer those questions, that was a green flag for sure.
Yeah. Do you have a certain scammer story that happened to you that you'd be willing to share, or did you get lucky because you just saw the red flag right away?
No, the first one got me. So we were going to watch the Super Bowl. It was Super Bowl Sunday, and she reached out earlier in the day, and was just like, this was the first one that ever reached out to me. I didn't know that emotional scams were a thing. I didn't know what to watch out for, and just kind of had me going for probably 2 days, just, messaging me a lot. And then all of a sudden she wouldn't for several hours, and then she would, and she'd just ask lots of questions about us. And, like just sometimes said funny things about, like, you would think like someone carrying a child wouldn't say that. Like, just, I don't know, like about, not wanting them or things. 'Cause so often birth mothers, do like really care about their children. And so just things like that started to feel a little fishy. And then pretty soon I was like, all right, like I mentioned an attorney and she was really weird about it. And I was like, okay, I don't know if this is real. Thankfully it was only a couple of days of like high emotions thinking that this could be like a good fit. And saying all that makes me think of another red flag. If they kind of say, oh, I just love you guys, I want you guys, without really talking to you, I feel like that's a red flag. Like, they can see everything on your profile, but until they really talk to you, that's such a big decision to make. Most of them wouldn't be sure until you've talked or maybe even met.
Yeah, those are really great ones, and some that I wouldn't have even thought of, because most of our families don't match through social. Occasionally they will, and I think it's always a good idea. You mentioned a couple things I want to go back to. One is profile and another is attorney. So I'm guessing you had your home study done first before you started your online stuff?
We actually didn't. So
Oh.
we talked to an attorney and just got some questions answered. And we were looking for someone to do our home study, but hadn't found anyone that was separate from an agency, that would just do it for a private adoption. And our attorney actually recommended them to us. But by the time we could meet with them and get that process starting, we decided to just go for it and try and start building an audience. We figured it would take a while and figured it would take longer than it did. But we ended up having it done in plenty of time. But yeah, we
Okay.
were kind of anxious, I guess.
So the first thing you did was talk to an attorney
Yes.
and kind of get that attorney that you knew that you were going to use.
Hmm.
Then you got your home study. And then now I didn't even really think about the fact that you said you also had a profile done, which we always have our families do. And I was kind of thinking, well, if everything's online, does she still need a profile? So who advised you to do a profile? How did you do it? And how did you share it?
Well, when I said profile originally, like if a scammer saw it and was like saying they wanted to match with you, I meant just like your social media profile.
Okay.
But we did do a book. I had just read that that's what a lot of people do.
Okay.
And I had been involved with fundraising for some pregnancy centers in the past. So I knew that sometimes they'll keep a book on file for any moms that might be considering adoption. So we had some made and we distributed them to places like that. And then we got a PDF version and posted that on our Facebook page so that she could see it there.
Awesome.
And we just made it ourselves in Canva. So I do have the experience with marketing to kind of do that sort of thing. But I know a lot of really great people that are graphic designers and offer that as well.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thanks. This is gold. This is awesome. Before we go on, we're going to take a quick break, but don't go away. We still have so much to talk about. Hey there, Adoption Roadmap fam. Are you ready to take the next step on your journey to parenthood? If so, head over to our website and take our quiz. It's called, Are You Ready to Adopt? It's not just about testing your knowledge. It's about making sure you're emotionally and practically prepared for the beautiful, complex journey of adoption. Let's make your dream of parenthood a reality. Go to rgadoptionconsulting.com and take the Are You Ready to Adopt quiz today. That's rgadoptionconsulting.com. The quiz is free, and it will let you know where you are in the process and if you're ready to jump into your adoption journey. Tell us about that moment when your oldest son's birth mom first reached out to you on Facebook. What were your initial thoughts and feelings? You said you knew right away. How did it evolve? How did she, what was it about you that she responded to? Do you remember that whole thing?
Yeah, so we were camping with family, and it was later at night. It was already dark out, so probably 9 or 10 o'clock. And she just reached out and said, I'm pregnant and I've been thinking about adoption. And right away I was like, I feel like this is just another emotional scammer. But because I think I was just trained to think that from the first message, because at this point we had that one
Mm-hmm.
on Super Bowl Sunday and several since. And then she just a few more messages just about her situation and asking us about like rights and different things about how the process worked. And like if she would need an attorney and all these things. And so we answered the best that we could. And just the fact that she was asking such responsible questions, we were like, okay, this is not just the same as any other scammer. And I remember my husband saying like, I really think this is it. And so like we're with a big crowd of extended family, and like I see that come through. We both saw it come through on our phones because we were both managing the Facebook account, and so we kind of snuck away around the corner and we're like talking about it, like, oh my gosh, is this like a real thing? And she just kind of asked all the right questions, and it wasn't like we matched that day. We got to know her over about 5 or 6 weeks, and eventually she decided to move forward with us. She was probably about halfway when she first reached out, so she still had several months till she was due, which made us a little nervous, just like, okay, how can we support her and make sure that she's making the right decision for her without making it like, oh, we just really want this to work out our way, you know? But we just took it one day at a time, answered questions, tried to give her space, helped her get connected to people who could answer the questions that we couldn't, and just really let her know, like, we support you. We understand you're in a difficult decision. We would love to, for you to consider us adopting your child. But if you decide on someone else, or you decide that adoption's not for you, then like we support you, because this is your decision and we want it to be right for you. And so I think that's probably part of what made us stand out. I don't honestly know if she was talking to other families. But I just think, we just tried to love her for who she was, right where she was at. And I think she really saw that and appreciated that.
Yeah, wow. And how often did you talk once she first reached out to you?
It varied. So sometimes it was, a couple messages each way for a few days in a row. And then she might go quiet for 2 weeks. And like looking back, I don't even remember. I mean, I'm sure it was just agony. Like it's all just the past now, like just wondering, what was going through her head, and how we could best support her, and if this was going to work out. But I think she just needed to take that time and really make sure that it was the right decision. And she's since told us multiple times that she knows it was. And I wouldn't want to adopt under any other circumstances. I can't imagine what it would feel like if she wasn't sure, or, felt like maybe it was the wrong thing. So, hindsight's 2020, and how difficult that was to navigate is completely worth it, because now we have a super healthy, open adoption that we're really grateful for.
That's so great. So we talked a little bit about being consistent. Were there certain posts that resonated most with your followers, and do you remember what post it was that your son's birth mother responded to?
I don't know for sure what post she saw.
Okay.
I don't know who shared it. She wasn't following our page, so it was somebody who was following our page that shared something, and then that's how she found it.
Wow.
But what resonated the most, I did this once a month, and I called it a big share ask. Just a little term I made up, but basically like taking a good picture of us, putting a few bullet points, like these are our names. This is roughly, like, we live in Northwest Ohio or whatever it is, and we're hoping to adopt, and these are a few things about us, and then just kind of quick bullet points, and then just saying, will you help us reach our goal of adoption by sharing this post? And those would get, and it grew as I did it, but first like 75 shares, and then the next time it might get 120 shares, and by the end those were getting 500 and 600 shares, and that's really when the word starts to travel. So you don't want to do that all the time and kind of burn people out. But once a month, I found for our audience was just the right amount that people are like, oh, I haven't shared anything from them in a while. I'll share that. And then, 5 of their friends see it and follow our page, and maybe 3 of those people share it, and a few of their friends see it. And just that's kind of how the growth spiraled. And those are definitely the posts that perform the best.
Okay, interesting. Big share ask, where you would just post a great picture of you and say, this is who we are. This is what we're trying to do. Please help us by sharing it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's so great. And that's also a great marketing tip that I have learned, which is you want to sell, right? Quote unquote, sell, but not consistently,
Right.
only about once a week or once a month, or, in your case, once a month. So I love that. I love that you took that strategy. That's great.
Yeah. And in between that, I think it's so important. Like, then you might think, oh, well, why don't I just post once a month and post that? But in between that, you really have to kind of nurture those followers you have, and give them a glimpse into your life. Educate them about adoption. They're going to follow you because they're getting something, whether it's they're learning about adoption, they get warm fuzzies by feeling like they're helping you, and, just whatever it is, you kind of have to build that. And then in exchange, you ask them about once a month, please share this. And then once we explained, sharing is what's going to get us there. Sharing is what's going to get more eyes and going to help us get to where we're trying to go. Then we had people that were so wholeheartedly in support of us that they'd share every post. And it was like, okay, like, I appreciate it. You don't have to, but I mean, if you want to. And usually it was like our moms and, just like their friends or whatever. But, yeah, so it was really great to see that support come through.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. You have to nurture them. You have to, it's know, like, and trust.
Hmm.
So they needed to know you and to like you enough to want to share you
Hmm.
first.
Absolutely.
So great point. So social media, you alluded to it a little bit earlier, can really be a double-edged sword. And you had said on TikTok, there were a lot of people who were against adoption, or, there's a lot of haters out there on social media. So
Hmm.
how did you handle any negative feedback or criticism about adoption that you encountered online? And do you have any specific stories?
Yeah, so I think that there are some crowds that have negative opinions about adoption for a
Mhm.
lot of different reasons. And a lot of times they are adoptees that just, it wasn't best case scenario and things didn't go perfectly.
Mhm.
And that's very valid. And I'm happy to talk to anybody who's willing to have a reasonable and respectful conversation about that. But
Mhm.
I found very quickly that that was not these people, and they were just out there to spread hate. And once they find you, they have groups of like minded people and they pass your name around, and then they just kind of all come for your TikTok or your Instagram or your Facebook page.
Mhm.
And so that did happen a handful of times throughout our journey with both adoptions. And at first I didn't want to just block them and move on because I was like, well, I feel like if we're going to parent a child that's adopted, we need to hear what they have to say. And I still stand by that. However, these particular individuals showed very quickly that they weren't willing to be respectful. They were just trying to attack. So I think that's what I learned, is that you have to weigh that out. You have to listen to what they're saying enough to see where are they coming from. Are they coming from a place of, hey, let's have a reasonable conversation? Or are they coming from a place of, I can hide behind this computer screen and say all the hateful things I want to say
Mhm.
and just attack everyone who comments on your post or whatever. And that was happening. Like, they were going after people who had commented on our different posts and different content. And that's where I was like, okay, like this is going too far. And so it's just blocking them and moving on. And
Mhm.
like I said, at first that was difficult because I didn't want to just silence someone who
Mhm.
had something to say. But again, it's all about how they say it. And um, I learned our page is kind of our property. It's our, like, we built it and we have the ability to control whether or not people are going to be respectful there. And if they're not, then they're not allowed to be there. Same as we'd treat our home. If you're not going to respect us and other people, then you're not welcome here. And so, at first it's very difficult, but it does get easier. And that was another thing I'd never thought about. I never thought that there was such a strong crowd of people that just hate adoption. And um, it makes me sad for them
Mhm.
because I think adoption has blessed our lives in so many ways. And I hope that they can get to a place where they can feel better about their situation.
Mhm.
But that's just kind of how I learned to approach it through the process.
Yeah. And unfortunately, like you said, you're not the only one. There are groups that literally have, when one person finds something, they have a whole group and they
Mm-hmm.
go, go attack, get
Mm-hmm.
on attack mode, share their pictures. They'll take screenshots. I've been the victim of that. And
Mm-hmm.
almost everyone I know in adoption has.
Mm-hmm.
But it was the first time that I really experienced somebody trying to adopt that received that hate. Recently, one of my clients, because they were on social, and it can be very harmful.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right. It's like, now you're vandalizing my property and you're hurting me and I'm threatened
Mm-hmm.
and you're bullying me and all the negative things. And I agree with you. You can try to have a conversation, and as soon as you quickly realize that's not really what they're interested in, they're not interested in educating or having a reasonable conversation or changing their minds or opening their hearts. That's not who they are or what they want to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that is the approach I also took, was bless and release
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and say, not on my property.
Mm-hmm.
You can,
Absolutely.
take this to your friends and families if you want.
Mm-hmm. Right. Right.
So, yeah, I'm sorry that you experienced that. And I also am happy that it didn't stop you and that you were able to just block and move on, as you said.
Yeah. Thank you.
So, yeah. Adopting two children less than a year apart. Some might call that crazy.
Yeah.
Was this your intention?
Yes, it was. Looking back over the last 2 years, 2 years ago, we did not have a child. 2 years ago, we were talking to our oldest bio mom and matched with her and just kind of waiting for him to come. And I would
How
have,
far along in the pregnancy did you match?
we matched in early August and she was due in early December. So it was 6 months, September, October, 5 months maybe. So we had a little ways. He was born in the end of November, so we were matched for 3 good months, I'd say. And in that time, we bought our first house, so it was just a blur. Like we just had a lot going on. But 2 years ago, I never would have pictured my life how it is now. I would not have pictured two adopted kids and two under two and two under one for a little bit there. But it's just crazy how, I really believe God works everything out. I believe that he put that desire on our hearts because this was the plan he had for us and for our boys. And our oldest was such an easy baby. And we were like, I don't feel like we shouldn't try to adopt again. And it might take a long time. So maybe we should just get started now. And that was when he was about 5 months old. And then about 4 or 5 months later, we got a phone call from the OB office where our oldest birth mom went with him and said, hey, I have this young couple that's due in 3 weeks and they are considering adoption. And I know that you just adopted. And so I reached out to your son's birth mother and she said you'd like to adopt again.
Wow.
Can I give them your phone number? And I was like, yes, absolutely. And so we talked to them and I actually sent them our Facebook page. So they didn't find us on Facebook. That one found us word of mouth. But I do think Facebook was a huge part because they only had 3 weeks till the due date and he was born on his due date. So it was kind of like a crash course in who we were and who we were before we adopted our oldest and then who we were as a family of three. And they could learn so much about us, from their phones very quickly. So we talked to them. We shared the Facebook page. A few days later, we went to dinner and all of a sudden we had two babies.
Oh my goodness. I love that. Wow. And do the two birth moms know each other?
I think they know of each other. I don't think they really knew each other before all of this. But
Okay, you've never gotten all together.
no, we haven't.
Okay.
I would like to someday, though. That would be fun.
So how many months apart are your children?
10 and a half, and my youngest will be one on Saturday. So for about 6 weeks, I'm going to have two 1-year-olds.
Oh my goodness. How blessed are you?
Yes, very much.
I love it. And you're so passionate now about your experience and about adoption that it is leading you into wanting to help others do this same thing that you did pretty much.
Yeah.
And you've created a course called Using Facebook to Match for Adoption. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, so right before my youngest was born, started an Instagram account because we had matched on Facebook and I knew that there were people that wanted to do the same thing. So I had really enjoyed making reels when my husband and I were doing that. And I was like, I'm just going to start doing this, talking about adoption and seeing what happens. And I had so many hopeful adoptive parents start following me and reaching out and asking about it. And then kind of kept them in the loop as we went through. Like after we got placement with our oldest, I kind of told them about it, shared pictures of him and just walked them through the process of what everything was like, what we did to match. And open adoption and all of that. And then people just kept asking me, how did you do it? How did you do it? And so I made posts. I felt like I was just repeating myself over and over, kind of saying all the things I've said in this conversation so far today. And finally I was like, maybe I should just make a course. Like then people can kind of access it as they want to. They don't have to scroll through 2 years of Instagram posts. So it's not done quite yet. Believe it or not, having two babies makes it a little difficult to have time for
Yeah.
those kind of things. But I'm very excited to have it done, hopefully in the next month or two, so that people can just kind of adopt the principles that we used and have some success for themselves.
That's awesome. I can't wait to see it. And you'll have to share that with me so that we can share it with our people. But can you give us a sneak peek and kind of boil it down with some tactical advice for our listeners? What are 3 must-dos for anyone trying to match through social media?
Yeah. So a huge one is to make a separate page. And we talked a little bit about that and why it's important. It's just going to help so much with the algorithm and just how you show up. And then again, being consistent, like you said, that's how people get success. It's just being consistent, show that you're here and you're serious about what you're trying to do. And then I think one that we kind of touched on, but is really important, is just be authentic. Like, you're not trying to adopt as someone you're not. You want anyone who decides to place their child with you to know you for who you are, to choose you for who you are. And so you need to make sure your content is representing who you are. It needs to represent your family structure, your lifestyle, your faith, if you're people of faith, and the right birth mom will choose you for that. People probably overthink it. I know I did. Like, oh, well, if I say, we like to camp all the time, are they going to think we're never home? Or you can always overthink it, but the right birth mom will choose you for the right reasons, and it'll all go how it's supposed to be. So I've heard stories of birth moms choosing someone because they like the same candy that they do, or there's just so many different reasons that people could have, and you don't know what those are. So you just need to be yourself and wait for her to find you.
100%. That's great, great advice. Before we wind up, tell me one thing about each of your kids that they're into right now. Like, what are their newest tricks?
My oldest, we're trying to potty train, so I hope that I can say soon that that's done. We'll see. But he loves animals, so we have some ducks and chickens and cats, and he is just obsessed. He's always wanting to go outside and stomp around in the mud and play with the animals, and he always tells me he sees a cow, and there's never a cow, but someday we'll drive by a cow and he'll be right. And my youngest, he just loves wheels, so he loves anything that spins or drives around. My husband's really into NASCAR, and we joke that he has NASCAR senses, because it seems like every time he's napping during the race, he wakes up early so he can watch the race with Dad. So his birthday party is going to be a NASCAR theme this weekend, and we're really excited.
My cheeks hurt from smiling so much. That is so sweet. Thank you. We just needed a little of that mommy gushing in there. Thank you so much for all these golden nuggets that you dropped during this episode, and for sharing your story and your experience. Where can people follow you and find you so that they can learn about the course once you put it out there?
Yeah, so there's a wait list. I'll share the link for that so that they'll get an email when it's available. But you can follow me on Instagram at The Helpful HAP, HAP, which stands for Hopeful Adoptive Parent. Or I have a Facebook group called Adoption Tips for Matching Using Social Media. So if you just search on Facebook and look for a group, you'll find it.
Amazing. And we'll share all of that in the show notes. But before you leave, I do a quick fire round with all of our guests. And that first question to you is, it's really more of a shout out. What person or organization has made a big impact on your life as it relates to adoption?
Our attorney, he is amazing. He's probably 75 years old, and he's only practicing adoption law because he wants to. Like, he's had a full career, and he just is just this warm older man that loves people and loves adoption. And we're so fortunate. We were recommended to him by a family friend, and we're so, so fortunate. If there's anything we did right along the way, it's working with him. So if anyone's in Ohio, Jerry Johnson out of Lima, he's amazing. I can't recommend him enough. And he's doing it for all the right reasons.
I love that. I'm in Ohio, by the way. I don't know
Oh,
if you knew
awesome.
that. I'm
I
in
didn't.
the Cleveland area.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I'm
Where
kind
are
of
you?
across the state, near Lima or Sydney.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. What is a hobby or skill you've always wanted to pick up but never had the time for?
So not having the time for all the things I want to do is kind of my life right now. But when I was younger, I always liked to make things. And so my grandma got me crochet lessons. And so I know the very basics of crochet, and I wish I had gotten more lessons and kept up with it more. I see things on Pinterest all the time that I want to make. And then if they can't do just the very basic stitches, I can't do it. So someday maybe I'll make the time to learn that.
When they start school.
Yeah, yeah, maybe.
Maybe. What's your favorite phone app right now?
Oh man, Instagram. Although I'm trying to cut back on just personal use, but there's been so many times in my life where I'm like, okay, I don't have time to scroll. I need to stop. But then it's like, but I want to teach people about adoption, and this is how I'm doing it. So it's always the dilemma for me, but I love Instagram.
And finally, what are 3 words that come to mind when you think of adoption?
Love, beautiful, and oh man, I don't know. That's tough. Hard, because I think it's like the perfect mix of beautiful and hard.
Awesome. Remember, success is a continuous journey. If you find yourself veering off course, just steer back onto the roadmap until you reach your destination. And whatever you do, never lose hope. Hope is that light inside you that will lead you to your dreams. Lindsay, thank you so much for being our guest today. This was wonderful, and I hope can help so many people.
Yeah, thank you. I really enjoyed it as well.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode of the Adoption Roadmap podcast. If you did, I have a few favors to ask of you. First, please hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. And while you're at it, I'd love to hear your takeaways. Please write a review and let me know what you liked. And if you have a question or a suggestion on what you'd like to hear, I'd love to hear that too. Please shoot me an email at support@rgadoptionconsulting.com and let me know what you'd like to hear about. And if you have a question, I may just answer it online. Thanks again for listening. Tune in every Wednesday and Friday morning for a brand new episode of the Adoption Roadmap podcast. Until next time, bye-bye.